For every villain whose pain makes you understand them, there's one whose sob story feels like a lazy excuse for evil. Starting with the tragic villain whose descent into madness felt rushed and unsatisfying, Charles Muntz from Up. Charles Muntz was Carl's childhood hero, a famous explorer accused of fabricating his discovery of the giant bird in Paradise Falls. Disgraced and obsessed with proving everyone wrong, he spent decades in isolation hunting the bird. The problem is we're told about this tragedy but never really feel it. The movie establishes him as Carl's idol, then reveals he's gone insane from decades of isolation, killing anyone who might steal his discovery. That's a huge jump. His turn from charming host to murderous villain happens in minutes. One moment he's serving dinner and sharing stories, the next he's trying to murder a child because he thinks they're after his bird. The tragedy is there, a man so consumed by the need to restore his reputation that he lost his humanity, but it feels rushed. We don't see the gradual descent into madness. We're just told he's been alone for decades, so he's crazy now. Fans found it underwhelming. Muntz's villain turn felt abrupt for such a tragic backstory, and they needed more time to show how isolation destroyed him instead of just telling us. Muntz represents tragic villains where the setup is rushed. We understand the concept of his tragedy, but don't feel the weight of it. However, while Muntz's tragedy felt rushed, Mr. Freeze from Batman the Animated Series became the gold standard for how to make audiences sympathize with a villain through genuine tragedy. Heart of Ice took a joke villain from the comics, a guy with a freeze gun, and transformed him into one of Batman's most tragic foes. Victor Freeze isn't evil for power or revenge against society. He's desperate to save his dying wife. The episode shows his love for Nora, his dedication to finding a cure, and the corporate greed that destroyed his work and froze him permanently. By the end, you're rooting for a man who's committed multiple crimes. Michael Ansara's voice performance is devastating. When Freeze says, "This is how I shall always remember you, surrounded by winter, forever young, forever beautiful," it's genuinely heartbreaking.
This is how I'll always remember you, surrounded by winter, forever young, forever beautiful.
Batman even leaves Freeze with the snow globe of his wife at the end, acknowledging that Freeze isn't evil. He's a man broken by grief and betrayal. Fans love him. Mr. Freeze is the perfect tragic villain. You understand him completely even while he's wrong. And Heart of Ice proved Batman TAS could make you cry for the bad guy. Mr. Freeze proved that tragic villains work when their pain is specific, their motivation is clear, and their humanity remains visible. But humanity gets lost when tragedy becomes an excuse for ego, which perfectly describes Turbo from Wreck-It Ralph, a villain whose sympathetic backstory gets completely overshadowed by his narcissism. Turbo was a racing game character who became obsolete when a newer game got plugged in. Unable to handle being replaced, he invaded the new game, caused it to be unplugged, and got his own game unplugged in the process. The movie tries to make his obsolescence tragic. Being forgotten and replaced is genuinely painful, but Turbo's response isn't about loss or fear. It's pure ego. He can't handle not being the center of attention. He doesn't just try to survive or find relevance. He takes over an entire game, disguises himself as King Candy, and tries to delete Vanellope from existence because her presence threatens his power.
We're going to give you a nice new home.
The twist reveal is fun, but his tragedy never lands because he's so thoroughly selfish. He's doomed multiple games and countless characters because he couldn't handle not being number one. Fans don't buy the sympathy angle. Turbo's backstory doesn't make him tragic, it makes him a narcissist. And being replaced sucks, but that doesn't justify what he did. Turbo represents tragic villains where the tragedy reveals character flaws rather than generating sympathy. His pain exposed his ego. It didn't create it. But ego without humanity brings us to the Diamond Authority from Steven Universe. Tragic villains whose genocide gets hand-waved because they were sad. The Diamonds are established as space dictators who've committed planetary genocide, created a caste system, and shattered thousands of gems. Then the show reveals why they did it all, because they missed Pink Diamond. The problem isn't giving them motivation, it's that the show treats mourning as justification for genocide. They're sad, so Steven forgives them, and suddenly thousands of years of systematic oppression is resolved with a hug and a song. White Diamond goes from totalitarian god empress to blushing and saying, "I'm so embarrassed" in like 2 episodes. Yellow and Blue Diamond get forgiven despite being space Nazis because they were grieving.
Can't have a flaw. I'm supposed to be flawless. If I'm not perfect, then who am I?
The show never addresses accountability. The gems they shattered, the planets they destroyed, the trauma they inflicted, all ignored because the Diamonds are sad now. Fans were furious. The Diamonds committed genocide and got forgiven in 5 minutes. And being sad doesn't excuse fascism. This ending is insulting. The Diamond Authority represents tragic villains at their worst, using trauma as an excuse rather than an explanation, prioritizing sympathy over accountability. Speaking of accountability, Tai Lung from Kung Fu Panda is a masterclass in tragic villains who remain accountable despite their sympathetic backstory. Tai Lung was raised by Shifu to be the Dragon Warrior, trained from childhood to believe he was destined for greatness. When Oogway denied him, his entire worldview shattered, leading to his rampage. The movie makes you understand him completely. Shifu filled his head with expectations and never prepared him for rejection. Tai Lung's breakdown is a child's dream being destroyed by the father figure who created that dream. But the movie never excuses his actions. Po defeats him not by matching his anger, but by being everything Tai Lung isn't. Humble, adaptable, and fighting for others rather than validation. The final scene where Shifu apologizes and Tai Lung responds, "I don't want your apology, I want my glory," shows his tragedy.
I don't want your apology. I want my scroll. What?
He can't move past his pain, even when offered a path forward. Fans appreciate the balance. Tai Lung is sympathetic, but the movie never pretends he's right. And his backstory explains him without excusing him. Tai Lung proves that tragic villains can be understood and opposed simultaneously. Sympathy doesn't require validation, but validation without earning it brings us to Catra from She-Ra in The Princess of Power. A tragic villain whose redemption divides fans more than almost any other. Catra's tragic backstory is clear. Raised in an abusive environment by Shadow Weaver, constantly compared to Adora, never feeling good enough. Her pain is real and her anger is understandable. The problem is what she does with that pain. Catra doesn't just lash out. She attempts genocide multiple times, tries to destroy reality itself, and emotionally tortures Adora for seasons out of spite.
I told you not to come back, but you just love feeling like a hero, don't you? You'd rather I left you there to die? What do you care?
Then in the final season, she gets a rushed redemption arc, where suddenly everyone forgives her, and she gets together with Adora romantically despite years of abuse. Supporters argue her trauma explains her actions, and she genuinely changes. Critics argue that attempting to destroy the universe goes beyond hurt people, into unforgivable territory. The debate is fierce. Catra's redemption was earned through real change and accountability, versus Catra tried to end existence and got rewarded with a relationship with her victim. Catra represents tragic villains at their most controversial, where the line between explanation and excuse becomes blurry, and fans genuinely can't agree if redemption was deserved. But redemption that feels deserved is exactly what Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender achieved, the blueprint for tragic villain to hero arcs. Zuko's tragedy is established immediately, scarred by his father for speaking out against cruelty, banished and told only capturing the Avatar could restore his honor. He's a child, abandoned by the person whose love he needs the most. What makes Zuko's arc perfect is that it's not linear. He makes progress, then regresses. He betrays Iroh at Ba Sing Se. He joins the Fire Nation again. His redemption isn't a switch that flips, it's a painful journey with setbacks.
And after 3 long years, your prince has returned! Zuko!
The show never excuses his actions. Katara doesn't forgive him immediately. He has to prove through consistent actions that he's changed. He doesn't just say he's different, he demonstrates it repeatedly. His relationship with Iroh provides the emotional core. When Iroh finally forgives him and they embrace, it's one of the most powerful moments in animation because it was earned through seasons of growth. Fans consider him the gold standard. Zuko is the perfect redemption arc, tragic backstory that explains without excusing, and genuine change through action. And every tragic villain redemption gets compared to Zuko. Zuko proves that tragic villains can become heroes when the redemption is earned through time, setbacks, and constant demonstration of change. But change requires time, which brings us to Syndrome from The Incredibles, a tragic villain who never gets redemption, but whose backstory makes you understand exactly how he got there. Syndrome was Buddy Pine, a kid who idolized Mr. Incredible and wanted to be his sidekick. When Mr. Incredible rejected him during a crisis, Buddy's hero worship curdled into obsession and revenge.
Fly home, buddy. I work alone.
It tore me apart, but I learned an important lesson.
The movie doesn't justify Syndrome's actions. He's killed dozens of heroes and endangers children, but you understand the origin. He's what happens when hero worship is crushed by someone too caught up in their own life to handle a fan gently. Mr. Incredible's dismissal was understandable. He was in the middle of stopping a crime, but to a kid, it was devastating rejection from his idol. Syndrome's tragedy is real even though his response is monstrous. The movie never redeems him. He still dies trying to hurt the Incredibles, but his backstory adds depth without requiring sympathy or forgiveness. Fans appreciate the complexity. Syndrome is tragic but unforgivable, exactly how it should be, and you understand him without needing him to be redeemed. Syndrome proves that tragic villains don't need redemption arcs to be compelling. Sometimes understanding is enough. So what separates beloved tragic villains from hated ones? It comes down to whether the tragedy explains or excuses, and whether redemption is earned or handed over. Mr. Freeze, Tai Lung, Zuko, and Syndrome work because their pain is real and specific. Their actions are never fully excused, and any redemption comes through demonstrated change over time. The failures, Charles Munn's, Turbo, the Diamond Authority, and controversial Katara, either rush their tragedy, let ego overshadow sympathy, use trauma as justification rather than explanation, or expect forgiveness without proper accountability. The best tragic villains make you say, I understand why, but that doesn't make it right. The worst ones say, they're sad so it's okay, or they're insecure so genocide is understandable. Which tragic villain breaks your heart, and which one makes you angry with how their story was handled? Drop your takes in the comments and subscribe.